Thank you very much, all of you, for being here. Especially thanks to Kim Chi for inviting me to this seminar. I'm very proud and happy to be among you, so we can share some analysis and some thoughts and debates with local academics. For me, it's a really privilege to be here in Hong Kong, in Lingnan University. I'm very thankful, and I hope I will be with enough clarity and deepness in my presentation. First of all, I will introduce myself. My name is Juan Serrano. Serrano like the ham, you know, very easy to remember. I'm a teacher of the University Bernardo Higgins of Chile, but I'm a Spanish citizen, and I made my PhD in France. So I'm gonna make this presentation based partially on my PhD research, that is a socio-historical study of the memories of the Civil War and Franco Regime. Or more precisely, is a research about the impact, the influence of that memories and the conflicts among them in the shape of the democratic system in Spain nowadays. So, as I said, this presentation of Catalonia is about Catalonia. The current political crisis in Spain and Catalonia is based partially on that research in this socio-historical study, and is completed, is updated, if you want, with the recent phenomenon, news that we can learn every day in the media. So I'm going to adopt a chronological point of view. I know that I'm not sure how familiarized you are, this audience is with the Spanish politics. So I decided to try to follow a chronological structure in my presentation, because there is so many political parties, actors, historical personages, events, dates, that it can be very confusing. So I decided to make it simple and try to make a presentation of 40 minutes, 45 minutes, and then to open up a debate with more deepness about like the more deep analysis of the current situation. So I'm going to try to go like very factual, if you want, a little bit descriptive, for go deeper and deeper as the time passes. Okay. So as I say, this is the structure of my presentation. First, a very general background with some facts and some historical background before the Civil War. And then I will talk about the Civil War and the Franco regime, or Francoism, as you want. And then the transition to democracy, and finally the current political crisis from 2010 or 2011 to nowadays. The main idea, the thesis of this presentation is a bit provocative, I don't mind to say. It's a bit provocative. I will try to explain that the current political crisis is mostly the result of a conflict between elites, between establishment, if you want, that they are more and more divided, resulting to two different nation-building processes that are quite influenced by these memories of the Civil War and Francoist regime. So as I say, my provocative thesis is to try to deconstruct the essential identities of Catalonia or Spain. Try to adopt a more sociological point of view. I'm a political scientist with a sociological formation. So I would like to think more about actors and speeches in public sphere, more about that than thinking about the essential identities that we can really approach empirically. So I'm trying, and I know also that in international media, the Catalonian conflict or the crisis in Spain has been presented a lot with a kind of approach that I don't like, that I don't feel comfortable of, like trying to victimize one side or blame the other. And I think it's more complicated like that. I mean, I will try I hope that after this presentation, when you go back home, you will teach in your classes, or we discuss with your friends or your colleagues, you won't tolerate this kind of sentence like Spain doesn't want the independence of Catalonia, or Catalonia wants independence, etc. You understand? It's more complicated than that. We'll try to follow this idea. So some general background, as I said. I mean, I know you already know, but just in case, this is the map of Spain, political map of Spain divided by regions. We call it autonomous communities. That's the legal term for regions in Spain in the current political legal system. So you have these autonomous regions. You have Andalucía, the biggest one, Castilla-La Mancha, Extremadura, Madrid, small one, Catalonia, of course, This is Murcia, where I came from, my hometown, even if I left it very, very long time ago. So, just in case to remind you where is everything. So some very little facts. Catalonia, the surface is not too big compared to China, of course. Is the historical border with France and the Mediterranean Sea. That explains a lot, like historical exchanges. It's a cosmopolitan place, the first cosmopolitan place we want in the peninsula. The population, a lot. You know, it could be one of the biggest states in Europe if it becomes independent. Like Slovenia, Belgium is much less, for example. So don't remember that. It's almost 20% of the GDP of Spain. That's not an anecdote. It's not an anecdote at all. It's very important. Can you imagine, a political scenario where the possibility appears that 20% of your economy will leave? That's very threatening for a lot of people, isn't it? As we were discussing before in the lunch, it's not good for business, right? This kind of uncertainty, It's an autonomous community, is what I said. This legal term, regional self-government, since 1979. And we have, as you know, I'm sure, these two co-official languages, Spanish and Catalan, following the model of, like, for example, Canada, that everybody is supposed to talk both languages, or at least to understand. So it's a kind of bilingual society, something I really respect and I admire. That you can have, I know a lot of Catalan people, I really like this part of Europe, and I really love to have these discussions with my friends in two different languages. I feel it's very good for, like, the intellectual exchange. It's maybe you have the same thing with Panthéon-Sorbonne and Wandonghua. Sometimes you can maybe combine two languages in one conversation. Well, this is some facts. The Catalan flag, official Catalan flag of the autonomous region is this señeira. We will see a lot of flags in this presentation. When we talk about nationalism, flags are very important. We have a lot of them here, as many as you want. I'm a little bit provocative because I'm a bit critical with the nationalism. So this is the national flag of, it's called señeira. That's the Catalan name of it, señeira. Yeah, we will go back to the flag issue later. So now some historical background, very, very fast. I don't want to bother you with a very descriptive class of history, but I think it's important to remind some facts, so you can see the historical deepness of the conflict nowadays. Okay, the conflict doesn't fall from the sky right now. It's not a result of some lottery or some chaotic event. It has a very, very thick historical background that, as we were talking about in the lunch, really shaped the political behavior of ordinary citizens and political elites, both of them. So what's the Spanish Second Republic? The Spanish Second Republic was this regime, this flag, another flag, the flag with you see the third color, three-color flag like in France or other European countries. So it's the regime who took place after the abdication of the king Alfonso XIII in the 14th of April, 31. So it was after a local election that all the Republican parties, new brand political parties, won the local election all around the country. So their king decided to go to the exile. He admitted his defeat and he left. The Second Republic regime ended at the end of the Civil War in 1939. And it was a time, as everybody will agree, of instability and violence. We have a lot of factors of that. We have a lot of worker revolts, especially the anarchistas, CNT in Catalonia especially, communist, socialist, a lot of workers class struggle, a lot of military coups. Some of them, all of them they fail, except the last one, as we will see. And economic crisis, of course, of 1929, the global economic crisis actually affected Spain. As you may know, at that time, Catalonia was the richest region of Spain, in a very strange situation, very, very complex scenario where the coexistence between revolutionary movements, and I'm talking, I repeat, about anarchists, like in Catalonia at the beginning of the 20th century was like almost 1 million of affiliated to anarchist syndicate, trade union. That's very, very strange. Not so many people know it. And they coexisted with nationalist bourgeoisie, like industrial entrepreneurship, that they have their own political movements, and that then is when the rise of the nationalist political movement. As you know, many nationalist movements in Europe are the result of this kind of industrial bourgeoisie entrepreneurship elite. They can see that the construction of a state nation is a way of emancipate society. maybe used to try to protect the right of propriety or to defend some kind of essence, historical essence, identity, etc., whatever. So they have this weird coexistence between the, I repeat, the working class revolutionary movements. They were armed, they had weapons and stuff. There were a lot of general strike. There were like a lot of violence in the street during these years, and the conservative but Catalan nationalist bourgeoisie elite. Well, this is very important. 32. After the proclamation of the Republic, we have the first Estatuto de Autonomía. Estatuto de Autonomía, we will translate it like basic law. You have the basic law in Hong Kong, right? The special administrative region of Hong Kong, we call it basic law, so it's like the same. It's like, to be precise, in Spain, in law terms, we'll call it organic law. So it's like a superior law that is under the Constitution, but below the rest of the law, no? So it's a law that regulates all the competencies of the regional government of Catalonia and creates the institutions of this government, of this administration, right? So they tried to have this first experience of self-government in 32. It was a complete failure. Even if the political parties, nationalist political parties won the election and they governed Catalonia, didn't do it for so long. In 34, there was a big crisis. I didn't put in the PowerPoint, but let's talk it about very, very fast. In 34, it was a big crisis in the whole country, not only in Spain. Like in Asturias, it's like a northern region next to Basque Country. There was a revolt of socialist miners, like workers in the mine, of coal mines, and the army has to intervene at the same time. So it was a moment with a lot of corruption scandals too. And the national politics were very, very polarized. It was like a very, very conflictual politics at that time, with a lot of violence in the whole territory of Spain. So some historians, they will argue that the Catalan elite took advantage of the situation, took advantage of the weakness of the Spanish state to try to declare the independence. Some other historians won't say that. Some historians will say the opposite, like the Catalan nationalist politicians. They try to proclaim the Catalan state in order to calm down the revolutionary movements that they were also trying to profit this chaotic moment. So it was a way of, we don't know, there's the two different interpretations, whatever. The thing is that we have this first precedent that all the political actors nowadays in Catalonia will remember and will try to talk about, will use it as this speech research in their mobilization, right? Of the failure of the first experience of independence declaration, Catalan state. So, and this is very important. This is very, very important. There was some fighting in the streets in Barcelona. And who did fight who? That's the interesting point. For me, it's very as a political scientist, this is one of the key issues that we will go back later. Who fight who? The army fight the police. The police was governed by the regional administration. So as you may guess, the state lost the monopoly of violence. That's where I'm going to go. So this first experience, this riots, if you want, this revolt in 34, 48 people dead, and the violence broke down, appeared because of this, because of the absence of monopoly of violence, by the fact that the Catalan police, called Mossos d'Esquadra, that's the name of it, Mossos d'Esquadra, choose to obey the local government, regional government, instead of the central government. And this is something that happened a little bit in last October, without so many violence, but something like that happened. It's very important, okay? So you have like two different administrations that deals with different armed forces, and they can fight together. This is what happened in Yugoslavia too, in the 90s. Okay, so this is the Spanish Second Republic flag, as I was saying. You remember this, no? Señeira, you see? The same. This is very interesting. Actually, you know, the flag thing in Europe is quite recent. People believe that flags were until the caveman did have flags. It's not true. The flags are super, super new. They're very modern. It's from the 90s. Before that, all the flags were a marine thing. Commercial marine, actually, more than actually military marine. The boats have to have a flag to identify where they came from. So all the Spanish boats, they used this flag because it was the flag of the Reino de Aragón y Catalonia, of this kingdom, one of the four kingdoms that made Spain. So actually the Catalan flag, the Spanish flag, it came from the marine flag from Catalonia that is supposed to be the Catalan flag nowadays. That is a little anecdote, but for me it's very important to show up how the artificial construction of the past works, okay? So we tend to essentialize this flag, saying that, this flag, it represents the essence of my homeland since the beginning of times, but it's much more chaotic, because a boat have a flag, then your nation have a flag, my other nation have another flag, etc., etc. So it's what I like to call the historic chaos. So the Civil War. I'm going to go very fast. I know you know the principal facts, just to some context. I'm sorry if I'm a little bit descriptive. We will go deeper in the analysis later. So this is the beginning of the Civil War. As you may know, the Spanish Civil War wasn't a war, actually, from the beginning. It was a failure coup d'etat, a failure putsch, military coup, you say it in English, right? It was a failed military coup. The army tried to make a military coup in the whole country, the whole peninsula and the African territories of Morocco. That was one of the last colonies of Spain, here in Sahara, we don't see it. And by surprise, or because of a very bad preparation, the military coup failed in most of the territories. It only succeeded in here, Galicia, middle of Spain, a little bit here in Cadiz, and in Africa. What happened? At that time, there was some kind of colonial war in Africa. The Spanish army, infantry Spanish army, most of it was in Africa, was in Morocco, fighting against the independentists, the pro-independence, Moroccan pro-independence guerrilla movements, okay? So that's the big thing. The military coup was a complete failure in the main cities, Madrid, Barcelona, Valencia, the main ports, Málaga, Sevilla, etc. There was in the main city was Bilbao, the most rich and dense populated area, was a failure. Because as André Malraux, this French writer, and become later the Ministry of Culture with Charles de Gaulle in France in the 50s, he wrote his book, L'Espoir, The Hope, his very famous book. I'm trying to use some literature reference because I know the cultural studies you use it a lot. We don't in political science. It's a shame, maybe we should do more. So if you want to know more about it, this book, The Hope of Malraux, describes what it happened. So actually it was a military coup, the army goes to the street, and the workers organized in trade unions. They took the weapons. They were organized. They were somehow ready for this military guerrilla warfare. So they went to the military buildings and they reached the weapons and they organized this very chaotic militias pseudo army. Okay, so and the military men didn't expect that. So that's why we have this situation. But as I said, in Africa, it wasn't such a thing. Was not such a thing. So the army, the infantry army, reached the peninsula thanks to what? To the planes of Hitler. The Third Reich lent Franco. Franco was an Afrikaner, we call it, African military man. The Nazi regime lent to Franco the planes to get into the peninsula. Without that, the history will be completely different. And why did they need planes? Because the Navy was pro-Republican. The military who belonged to the Navy, the seas, especially Cartagena was the main port, they didn't follow the coup d'etat. They didn't follow the putsch. They said that they won't follow the putsch. So there was this division between the army. And as I said, the boats, the Navy kept Republican and the infantry kept pro-Franco, no? So that's the story. Well, there's the Franco regime. This is the page of a newspaper. 1st of July, they arrived to Barcelona. Use some photos, interesting. So that's the thing. The last territory to be occupied by Franco was this. They occupied in July. In July, they occupied this, and in April, they finished to occupy this. Okay. So as we were talking before, the Spanish Civil War is very, very important in cultural studies, or in literature in general, in cinema. And there is more books written about the Spanish Civil War than the Second World War. That's something surprising because it wasn't so big, no, for the destiny of humanity, if you want. But it has inspired so many writers and things. I wanted to quote only 2 books, the Homage to Catalonia of George Orwell, who described this militia movement, this Trotskyist anarchist militia warfare. And the movie Land of Freedom of Ken Loach, a British guy, I think it's 1991, that is based partially on that book. So you want to know more, if you are interested in this kind of ideas and facts, you can use that in your classes or for your references in your teaching or debates. So this is the two books are about the Republican side, are the experience of men in the Republican side. Well, now the Francoist regime. So as you know, as you may know, the Franco regime was allied to the Mussolini and Hitler, to Italy and Germany until the end of their regimes in '49. So this makes a very strange coalition, very strange regime. There is a lot of debate going on. It was authoritarian, it was totalitarian, it was semi-authoritarian, it was blah blah. It's a bit complicated. Actually, we can say that it was a regime that was created. It's a regime that was created during the war, so it has a military structure by itself because of the needs of the conjuncture. Okay, so it was a military organization when we find different groups, if you want. First, Catholic Church. Secondly, the army, part of it, not all, as I said before. Royalist members of the army, especially, and royalist entrepreneurs, landlords, bourgeois, etc. And fascist. Fascist is a bit complicated. We have this political party called Falange. We will go back later. That it was recently created in the 20s. It was a young party that was inspired directly from Mussolini movement in Italy, fascist Italian movement. Okay, the Falange. So as you may know, it's quite contradictory. Okay, to have like Catholics with rich men, with fascists, it doesn't really mix well. As you know, the fascist movement denies the existence of God. It's a totalitarian project where they are trying to create a new man, a new human being, and they need to control every aspect of life, especially the superstition or beliefs in the new state. That's why actually the expression, the term totalitarian came from one essay written by Mussolini that is called the total state. So the state has to be bigger than anything, bigger than a church. I mean, a church is the competition of the state. And we will come back later. That's one of the reasons that we don't really have a Spanish nationalism as we have a French nationalism, for example, because of the power, the influence of the church, who actually is in permanent competition with the state. So you don't have both loyalties. You have to choose between to be loyal to the church or be too loyal to the state. So it was a bit contradictory. So authoritarian or totalitarian, as I said, this debate is academic, but it's not only academic. That's very interesting. And we like the political actors who wants to criticize the right-wing actors will tend to qualify the regime as totalitarian in this political game. So they say, okay, in all the countries of Europe, totalitarian regimes has been condemned, has been criticized, etc. In Spain, we have to do the same because Franco regime was also totalitarian. No? On the other hand, some actors, some conservative political actors nowadays will say the opposite. No, it was an authoritarian regime, as the one in Portugal, as the one in Greece. It was for some historical reason because it was a chaotic period. So we need like a hard ruler that actually prepare the transition to democracy. So we have this kind of conflicts of memory, no? Different interpretations of memory. Anyway, what historians agree is the repression of Republicans was very big. We are talking about at least 150,000 people in a country of 22 million people. And we have to remember that they were talking about civilians mostly. Eh? We're not talking about people killed in the warfare itself, but after 39, from 39 to 52, normally we say, or during the war, but in the back front, not in the first line of the front, okay? So that's why Spain today is, after Guatemala, the country with more mass graves, unopened, closed mass grave in the wall after Guatemala. And this is a fact. I mean, it has been a lot of human rights research, resolutions of the Committee of Human Rights of United Nations about it. International law has been active in this topic. Some actors, associations and political actors in Spain tend to use the international law to prove this, not that the Spain state is criticized by that, so try to impose some, try to promote some version of the history, because using the human rights narrative, okay, and the international law. whatever. This some facts. This is more in the core of our presentation about the Catalonian political crisis, the Franco ideology, regime ideology. This is very important because we will see how it shapes the nowadays politics. Okay, like the influence of this past ideology is still present somehow, not directly, but it still shapes the political behavior in 2018. So as I said, the Franco regime is a bit complicated and it's very long. We're talking about from 39 to 70 something, 78. So it has different periods of time. It has evolved, no? Like the PRC, the People's Republic of China. They have different moments, no, of evolution. Whatever. Normally some historians use this term national Catholicism to describe this ideology that is a bit contradictory. I like this photo because it shows up the contradiction I'm talking about. Military men, old school, Napoleonian, 19th century, royalist, fascist, black shirt. It's actually a copy of Mussolini. Actually, this guy, Ferrero Suñer, he was a very enthusiastic of Italy, of Mussolini Italy. So you can see that it's a strange coalition, no? Permanent competition, and some people say that Franco, he wasn't a very charismatic guy. He wasn't a very charismatic leader, but he was like a fox, we say, like a very clever man in the way of exploiting the competition between the factions of the regime. So it's very interesting to see, for example, the change of the governments. Franco changed the ministries a lot. Every 1-2 years, even less, they changed the government, different members of the government, of the cabinet, if you want, playing this competition between factions. That's how he remained in power for almost 40 years. Some historians say that, like Paul Preston. But you should use some facts. I like this photo. This is a propaganda poster of Republican side, okay, the Republican band. So it's a propaganda thing. It's against Franco regime, against the nationals, they call it. But there is in almost all the history books in Spain. So the children in the school, they use this. They always see this photo because it's very explicit. I really like it. So I repeat, it's a critic. It's a poster who is trying to criticize the Franco side, no? So you see this coalition of the church, the old military of fashion, the rich men with the Nazis also, and as I say, the African army. That's very important to remember. One of the reasons that the repression against the Republican was so strong, so many people were executed, can be explained by some kind of totalitarian craziness or fanaticism of them, but not also. It's also a more concrete thing. Is that these guys, I mean the African army, were used to do this strategy of burnt soil, you call it in English maybe, like the strategy of killing everyone, let's say. So they reproduced the military habits that they had in Morocco into the peninsula. You understand? So that's where their job. The Spanish infantry were a very bloody army because of that. It was not a traditional war, if you want, okay? And with the symbol of the Spanish Empire, the eagle. This is another showing up this contradiction I'm talking about. So this is Franco, and this is Primo de Rivera. Primo de Rivera is the founder of the Falange, this party I was telling you about before. And this painting, it has been analyzed a lot by historians. It's because it talks by itself. It shows up it's like a travesti, like a dark queen, if you want. I mean, Franco, he didn't have any totalitarian ideology in his life. He never used to that. Now he used this uniform to try to symbolize the union between all these different factions, as I was telling you. So we can see the similarities, no, with the two paintings. So this is the Francoist flag. I told you there's a lot of flags going on. So this is like the third flag we see, I think. Okay, some aesthetic analysis. So this is the Francoist flag. We have the eagle. That's the symbol of the empire, of the Catholic kings that we call in Spain. We have, you know that in Western world, the eagle is a symbol of empire in many, many nations. It's nothing new. Even in the USA, we have in the dollar, no, always an eagle, etc. We have this, I really like this, plus ultra, that's Latin, means like overseas, something like that. It's like the symbol of the Spanish Empire too, like overseas, the memories of the colonies in America, etc. And we have this new thing called una grande libre. Una grande libre. The translation could be something like one large and free homeland. So I'm going back to this unity thing. The unity of the territory of Spain is one of the most important points for the Francoist ideology. As I told you before, the Francoist ideology is quite precarious. It's quite contradictory. It's not like a totalitarian ideology from, I don't know, Third Reich or Italy or Stalinism. It's something much more, I repeat, precarious. But one thing that keeps there, that stays there, is this crazy idea of the unity of Spain, like a very important objective for the long term, etc. Okay. So this is very important. I told you the ideology of Franco. Maybe it didn't exist. We can say that we can argue that we can't use the notion of the concept of ideology. We have to look for something else. Anyway, what we know is that there was a lot of official commemorations, we call it memory policies too. Okay, the Franco regime used to invest a lot in these commemorations, monuments, statues, to remember the Civil War. Actually, and the Civil War, the expression Civil War was forbidden, was censored by the government, because a Civil War, as you know, implies a war between within a nation, within brothers and sisters. No, we can say Civil War means within a nation, no, right? So Franco regime didn't use that term. They used the term liberation war, saying that the other side of the war, they were foreigners, they were the anti-Spain. They used to say anti-España, the anti-Spain. They denied their Spanish nature. They were not nationals, okay? So as I said, the Franco regime was built in a lot of symbolic policies, commemoration, etc., that remind people all the time the Civil War itself. For example, I really like this. I mean, these two examples are very important. It's like the official national days. The bank holiday were 2 days, 18th of July, 1st of April. The beginning and the end of the Civil War. Can you imagine, like in the USA, the national day is not the 4th of July, but the last day of the Civil War of America, the day where some side conquer another side, where there is victor and defeated. You understand what I'm trying to say? So the national day was supposed to create some cohesion in the nation, right? It's not an Independence Day against some kind of foreign occupant. It's not some historical event that unifies society, whatever. It's actually the opposite. The national identity was based in the defeated of the Republicans. Okay, that's very, very important to remember, and because it will have a lot of effects nowadays too. The Franco ideology is based on the victory or the defeated of the Republicans. That we deny their nature of being Spanish. So this is the 4th of July, Glorious Alzamiento Nacional, glorious military coup, 1st of July, the day of victory. And this propaganda that shapes Spanish society mentality, trying to, when we analyze the Franco speeches, for example, that happen in these days, we have this like very military parade with the speeches, etc., with publication. No, we see all the time that the Franco say that something like the Spanish people are naturally oriented to kill themselves, so democracy is too dangerous for them. Democracy, Spanish people are like children that can't have democracy because democracy will amplify conflicts, and conflicts will end in a new civil war. It's very subtle, but this official memory, as you may say, justify the war by the peace. They justify the current peace by the past war. We had a war to now have peace, something like that. It's a bit stupid for some people, but that was the official propaganda, no? So as I was saying, the memory of the Civil War, memory policies, if you want, was a big issue for the Franco regime. It was not a small thing, it was a very big thing, okay? They invest as a social domination because it mobilized fear. So society was educated into the fear of a new repression, of a new killing, or a new war. As I said, the Franco's official memory of the Civil War still shaped Spanish politics. Independence of Catalonia is perceived, for some people, not all society, of course, as a threat to peace for many conservative Spaniards. Yep. So now we are going forward on time. The end of Franco regime, transitional democracy, some very, very fast facts. The transitional democracy started with the death of Franco, most of the historians will say, in 1975. Anyway, in the 60s, as I was saying before, The Franco regime was some kind of weird coalition from even contradictory factions. In the 60s, the fascist faction, the Falange, was completely expelled from power. And the new fractions, especially members of the Opus Dei. Opus Dei is this Catholic group, very economic liberal group that, for example, influenced a lot in politics in Chile, Argentina too. It's like some people, there is this writer called Vázquez Montalbán. Maybe you can check it out later if you may use it for your classes of cultural studies. Vázquez Montalbán is from Catalonia too, very nice writer, I really like him. He used to say that the Opus Dei is a cult of, ¿cómo se dice? Triunfadores. The cult of ambitious people, something like that, like people with a lot of money, with a lot of ambition. No? So it's Opus Dei. They took power and they started to liberalize the economy, especially to end the isolation of Spain. Spain was completely isolated until that, because of the Cold War, of course, because there was an ally of the fascists. So most of the countries isolated Spain. In the 60s, Spain go back to the international community with their entry in the UN, etc., etc. So this is something that all my foreign friends or colleagues ask me, I don't understand. So Franco made a coup against the Republic, but when they won, there was no kingdom. So what, I don't understand. No? It's a bit tricky. No? So actually Franco made the civil war against the Republic to restore the monarchy, but there was some kind of inside conflicts, and because of the war, the dynamic of the war, Franco took too much power, and he decided to keep the power for himself and build up this regime I was talking about you before, especially because the father of the Juan Carlos was called Don Juan de Borbón. He was somehow pro-democracy, let's say, so he fight with Franco, didn't came along. So what happened? They have some kind of deal. Don Juan, he abdicated to his son when he was like 9 years old, and with the condition that the future king, will have to be educated in Spain into the values of national Catholicism, into the values of Franco regime. So now the actual king of Spain is Felipe VI. His father, Juan Carlos, you may see him in TV or in photographs a lot. I repeat, he was educated in Spain as a condition for the restoration of monarchy, to try to have some guarantee that the Franco values, the national fascist, pseudo-fascist values, will keep going on after the Franco disparition, after the Franco death, okay? So in 1969, they passed this bill saying that, in 1969, they passed a bill saying that when Franco will die, the head of state will disappear, the monarchy will be restored in Spain within the regime, okay? So when Franco died, Juan Carlos was appointed as head of state. And this is what the historians now, there is some kind of revision of the history of the 70s for a very long time. A lot of historians say that the king was some kind of very important, clever, heroic man, like a hero, who was smart enough to see that Spain will have to go to democracy. So he betrayed his education, he betrayed his mentor, Franco himself. That was the official history of the transition to democracy of this period of time, okay? Of the 70s. The official history say that the king, I repeat, betrayed the values of Franco, no? Now the historians are much more critical with that. They say that it wasn't so simple, that everybody arranged actually to open up Spain to the European market. We have to understand that in that time the European Union was, it wasn't the European Union, it was the European Economic Community, was growing up and was working. It was a unified market that was very attractive for the countries like Spain, Greece, Portugal. It was like, and the condition to get in this new empire, this new economic empire that was Europe, the condition was to become a democracy, okay? So everybody arranged to become a democracy, so Juan Carlos, he nominated a few politicians in order to make these reforms. I'm gonna go fast with that. The first law was 77, the political parties, prisoners, free parliamentary elections 77. This parliament appointed itself as the Constituent Assembly. Now something is a little anecdote, but it's important to remember. In Spain, we didn't have constituent elections to create a new constitution. Is the first free elections became by themselves a Constituent Assembly. They wrote down this constitution that was adopted by referendum in 78. Okay. So as I was talking before in the lunch, this is very important, recollection speech. the reconciliation speech, the symbolic end of the Civil War. We have a lot of photos. I should have put some of the PowerPoint, I forgot. We have these photos of like the old exiled people coming back to Spain and even being elected as MPs. Santiago Carrillo, he was the head of the Communist Party, the Spanish Communist Party. He was exiled in Paris, Prague, and Moscow for many years, for almost 40 years. He came back to Spain and he was elected MP. He was like almost, I think, 70 years old, very old man. And we have these images of him like shaking the hand of an old Francoist civil servant or ministry, you understand? So if you check the media of that time, all the public sphere was dominated by this reconciliation. In my PhD, I'm very critical with this concept of reconciliation. I don't really understand what you're talking about. I mean, reconciliation is a Catholic concept. You understand? So you forgive someone when this someone accepts his guilt. What I'm trying to say that the reconciliation, you have to be very, very critical with this concept. It's not common sense, okay? It's very, very cultural biased. I have a friend, I fight with him. Okay, I ask him, I'm sorry, I shouldn't do that. We can have a reconciliation. Why not? With my girlfriend, okay, I shouldn't have washed the dishes, so please forgive me. Okay, I can. But this is, you understand, it doesn't make sense. A society can reconcile itself. I don't really think so. But at least, apparently, what I do in my research, I do a lot of like microsociology. Like I study like archives of like small actors during the transition. And I can tell you that most of them, they use the reconciliation narrative in a very strategic way. Because it was in the air du temps, as you say in French. It was in the air at that time, okay? It was the official, political, efficient narrative to adopt. So all the political actors agree to adopt this reconciliation thing. Now we are finished the Civil War. We all were victims. We all were responsible for the Civil War. We all suffered the same in order just to go on, to move on. There's something that will break into pieces at the beginning of the 2000 decade. The 2000s, this reconciliation narrative will explode into 100 million pieces. Whatever. Constitution was adopted in 78, as I was saying. We created a parliamentary system, classical post-Second World War parliamentary system. It's like a parliamentary system with a lot of rationalization, like the censorship vote, etc., to make it more efficient, blah, 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 like in Germany or like in France, something like that. And more important thing, we create this state of autonomies, Estado de las Autonomías. This is very important because that will explain a lot of the current political crisis. The writers of the Constitution were not able to agree in some kind of territory model. So they create a new one. And actually this model is not a model, it's something like we will see later. I'm trying to simplify it a little bit to don't make you sleep. But it's like this state of autonomy is like the arrangement of say, okay, we don't really know what we're going to do, let's see later. So the Constitution actually gives makes some kind of empty space in order to make new laws. The new is called organic laws, like Estatuto de Autonomía, the law I told you before, the basic laws of each region, okay, that will complete the Constitution somehow. So we open up. The territorial organization is not really regulated by the constitutions because there was no agreement on that. So we create this kind of monster called the state of autonomies. Some academies will call it a regionalized unitary state, not federal at all, okay? That's very important because I can see that a lot in the media, international media. Be careful, Spain is not a federal state, it's more than that. And it's completely contradictory because we have a unitary state, we have the conception of one nation, it's not a plurinational state, like for example Canada. We don't have that. We recognize the nation of Spain that exists in all the territories of Spain. But we also have like small nations within this nation, Basque Country, Catalonia, and Galicia. The three of them are recognized into the Constitution, Article 2 of the Constitution. So it's kind of confusing, I know, but it's like unitary state. We recognize one single nation, even if we accept that there is a small nation within it. It's very complex, but it is what it is, I'm sorry. So, remember please that we have this crazy situation where the regionalized state have the regional institutions have more competencies than a federal institution in, for example, Germany or USA. Catalonian institutions have more power than any land in Germany. That's important to remember, okay? Because, I mean, to argue that Catalonia doesn't have self-government, I mean, any opinion is completely legitimate, of course, but it's not really true. They have, I repeat, the Catalonia institutions, they are in a better situation with this crazy regional state than in a federal system. So if we change the Spanish constitution to become a federal state, Catalonia nationalist politicians will lose power. So be careful with that. So that's what I call the presentation constitutional breakthrough, because there is no constitutional solution to this situation. The situation I'm going to explain later. No? There is no constitutional solution. If we create a federal state, there will be a lot of opposition because it doesn't resolve the situation. The solution is not to give more power to the Catalan administration, because we can't give more. They have almost all of it already. And remember, please, that federal, as the Federalist Papers say in the USA, I really like that when I was a student to read the Federalist Papers. Federalist implies equality. Each member of the federation is equal in their common destiny. To sum up very, very fast, okay? The Spanish regionalized state is the opposite. Some regions have a nation, some others doesn't have a nation, okay? You know, I'm from Murcia, as I was saying. So here, there is no nation here. Here, there is a nation. Here and here. Here, there is no nation. Andalusia doesn't have a nation. You understand? So it's a bit crazy. So federal system implies equality within the elements of the federation. The state of autonomy doesn't. So this is another flag, the democratic flag, as we can call. So we can see that this is the Francoist flag. We took off the fascist aesthetics, if you want. The imperial eagle, and this reference of patriot reference I was telling you before, no? So we arrange, it's like a reconciliation, no? We don't, in the transition to democracy, we don't create new symbols, completely new symbols, but we recycle the old ones in order to don't annoy anyone. For example, the national anthem. The national anthem of Spain doesn't have any lyrics. If you like football, maybe you have noticed. When you say, for example, Spain plays against Brazil. No? Brazil, the national anthem of Brazil at the beginning of the match, and they are like crazy, no? Or France, no? The full players are like that, like super, without of emotion, no? And it seems like they are going to win before the match starts because they are like super excited about it, no? And then the Spanish anthem plays, and there's no lyrics. It's like the very, very boring thing. It's like a military parade without lyrics. Why? Because during the Franco regime, we have the same anthem with lyrics. The lyrics were a little bit too bloody or aggressive or violent. So what do? We take off the lyrics, but we keep the anthem. It's this reconciliation model of transition. That's what I was telling you about. That in this kind of the minimum consensus in order to don't blame anyone, in order to don't annoy anyone, in this basis, it's very hard to build up some kind of sentiment of belonging, to create a Spanish nationalism. If all the symbols are some kind of agreement in a very hard negotiation, it doesn't excite anyone. It's boring. It's not sexy at all. Okay, so Catalan self-government. We have the second Estatuto de Autonomía, basic law, if you want, in 79. We have the creation of the Generalitat, this organic law, basic law, if you want. They create the institution, Generalitat, we call it, Generalitat. It's composed by the president, the government, and the parliament, mostly. Competencies, as I was telling you a lot, police, Mossos d'Esquadra, that's the police force in Catalonia. Education, justice, communications, taxes, transport, etc. More than any federal system. This is the symbol of the Generalitat Catalonia. So we are talking about, it was like 30,000 civil servants. I think it's like maybe 3 times more than Hong Kong, easily. This photo can look a bit stupid, but it's important. The flags, more flags, I know. So this is the Parliament of Catalonia. We have the 3 flags. This is like the aesthetic representation of this state of autonomies I was telling you about. We have the European Union, the Spanish flag, and the regional flag. Okay? And the 3 of them are official. Okay, so I'm going to go a little bit more theoretical now. National building process. I love this literature. For me, I was very excited when I discovered it as a student. I use it a lot in my PhD. All my Latin American friends, they criticize me a lot for that. They say that it's very old-fashioned, that nowadays we can think communities in a very different way, that is very Eurocentric to think about nation building, except if we talk about Europe, no? So we are talking about Europe, so it's okay, I guess. So we are talking about this social science, blah, blah, authors, as you know then, Norbert Elias, Gellner, Smith, Tilly, Juan Lins, that follow this Weberian approach of communities, no? So just to go very far, I mean, as I said, this is not the Bible, okay? There is no consensus among the academics on that. It's just some theoretical framework that I choose among others to use for my analysis. But I repeat, it's not the only one, it's just one of them that is especially adapted to understand Western countries, Western societies in long-term processes. I mean, this framework was created for that regional geographical space, no other one, okay? As I said, for example, to understand politics in South America doesn't really work. We could have colonial states, you know, but so it's a bit simplistic, I'm sorry, but the conclusion that I really like to underline so I can follow the debate is these 4 conclusions, no? Subjective sense of belonging. That's the expression of Max Weber I really like, I use all the time in my classes. So what you're talking about, you're talking about sentiment, about emotions. This is something that politicians really forgot about in the current crisis. Nationalism implies emotion, not rationality. Okay? So when you have to negotiate emotions, it's a bit difficult. If somebody goes crazy when he sees a flag, you can negotiate, it's hard to negotiate, okay, give me something instead of something else. No, I mean, I want my flag, you know? If someone wants a flag or he wants passport, it's hard to negotiate because we're talking about emotions. So remember that we're not talking about a primordial elements of identity. We're talking about subjective identities all the time in Europe, at least I was saying. So stop, please, looking for objective elements to describe a nation. No, the nation is a subjective process of self-identification. Nations are human artifact, actually a state product of bottom national building process. As you know, the paradigmatic example is France. How Charles Tilly, he showed us how they, as he said, to transform peasants into citizens, peasants into Frenchmen. So that's the special paradigmatic case, the case of France, where they achieved really to build up from the bottom from the top to the bottom, this French identity within, what did they use? A school, an army. And in this process in France, they were losers. Who was the loser? Catholic Church. You heard about this laïcité, this a confessional state of France, with all these conflicts with the burqa, with the scarf, Muslim scarf all the time in the news, right? It's because of that. I mean, that's the consequence of the national building process. The national building process in France was made against the church. Because I was saying before, in the case of Spain, we have these competitions between the church and the state. So in France, the state won the game, if you want, no? So I'm against. That's a personal choice. It's a personal choice. Maybe, I mean, if there is some independentist, pro-independence academic in that room, I would love to debate with him. No, I choose not to believe in essential identities. So, for example, I was reading the other day a historian called Josep Fontana. He's a very important historian, Catalan. Very, very brilliant, very respected. He says something like the conflict between Spain and Catalonia started 5 centuries ago. And intellectually, I don't really follow that. I don't admit it. I don't really feel that we can essentialize identities for 5 centuries. Come on, it's too. I believe more in the very cold, strategical, functional point of view of thinking of nations, something like an instrument actually to dominate and to create a market, as Gellner shows very well, no? He said like something like the nation is the result of the homogenization of the language. You have a country, you have society with different languages, like France, for example, I was talking about, you have the Occitan, the Normand, the Breton, French, etc. The school managed to try to teach everyone the same language. It was French, it could be another one, but it happened to be the French language, in order to unify the market, in order to unify the human resources, if you want, okay? So it was a result, it was a need of the new industrialization and capitalist society. It's a Marxist approach, but it really works out. Okay, this nationalism it can be explained as a result of the needs of the capitalism during the 19th century. The fact is that you need the state to create the nationalism. The nationalism doesn't fall from the sky. That's the main idea. And of course, we will agree at least in that national building implies arbitrary selection of symbol, memories, languages. As we were talking about the Cultural Revolution before, no? We choose now, maybe in China, I'm talking in a very superficial way, no? We may choose now, like in the mainstream media, to talk about the victimization narrative of the Cultural Revolution in order to legitimate the current regime, the current political situation, right? We may choose another one. We may choose a heroic revolutionary narrative of the Cultural Revolution, but that may be dangerous for the present, no? So the national building process implies a selection of some historical events to put in value and some other ones to be silenced or to be forgotten, no? We all have statues of some historical. The best examples of that is what happened in Eastern Europe after the fail of the Berlin Wall, no? After 89 to 81, like in Budapest, for example, the people start to break all the statues of Stalin and Lenin and so on. No? Have these conflicts of the official memories, right? They decide to choose new heroes of the homeland. The Russian heroes of the homeland didn't work out for them. So you see that there is an arbitrary selection always. Okay, whatever. So that's the Spanish paradox. I really like this paper. It's a Santiago paper, early state building and late peripheral nationalism against the state, the case of Spain. It's really outdated if you want, but I really like the title. It's very elegant, and it was like the first one to point this. No, like Spain is a bit an exception. I mean, all what I said before, it didn't work out for Spain somehow. So all the lessons, all the conclusion of the national building literature, this doesn't really apply to Spain. Why? Spain is the oldest state, if we consider like modern state, like there's a continuity of the territory, right, in Western Europe. The result of the union of these two kingdoms, okay? Aragon, Catalonia is inside Aragon kingdom. So we have the situation where the Spanish state as a kingdom actually is quite permanent on time. Since the 15th century, we have like the same border, more or less. But the Spanish Empire, let's see, there was a negative factor for development of industrialization as a condition for the national building process. Actually, the Spanish were very lazy. They preferred to take off the gold and the silver from America instead of trying to build up industries. So it doesn't help out the urbanization on the situation of the country. But in Catalonian-based country, it did apply. The national building process applied to Catalonian-based country. Why? Because they was industrialized. They have ports, they have industry, they have the bourgeoisie that was willing to invest in order to create products with added value to compete in the international market, etc., etc. Okay, so they created, as the French did, as the Hungarian did, as the Austrian did, as the German did. They started to create their own identity based on this process I was telling you about. So that you have to remember that when nobody in Spain tried to create a national building process, in Catalonia they did. Do you follow? And this process was completely amplified after the transition to democracy. In the early 20th century, we have the creation of these political parties in Catalonia that ask for some of them they ask for independence, as we saw before in the 34. We have this experience of tentative of independence proclamation. It was a failure, but so it proves that there was something going on. If you want, there was already a intellectual, ideological work going on to create a different identity of the Catalan nation. For 40 years, this process was completely prohibited. That creates, of course, a feeling in a lot of people, a feeling of victimization. Everybody said, my grandfather couldn't speak Catalan because Franco forbid him to speak Catalan. That's true, it's a real. The language was persecuted itself. So it created, like, if you want a parenthesis, it was 40 years, almost 40 years of absence of national building process, but the identity kept going on, it resisted, no? And this is the crazy thing, this national building process that, as I said, it normally is created by a state, by a central state with all the monopoly of education, of the regulation of the market, etc. It happened to happen in Spain within the state, infra-state, if you want. It was the regional administrations who promoted this process that in other territories in Western Europe were created by a central government. So peripheral political entities reproduce a national building process that and not like in other countries where it was a central administration doing it. Okay? So that's why he's called it peripheral nationalism. This is another photo. It's a funny thing too. This is Queen of Aragon and Earl of Barcelona. This is like the presentation of the Kingdom of Aragon. That was like the second half now of Spain. I was telling you before. This is the Earl of Barcelona with his señora, the black again. Okay, Catalan national building. Since 1979, Catalonia has built their own. Catalonia, I mean the Catalan administration, not the Catalan society, not the Catalan ideological essence of blah blah, not some kind of ghost or some magic. No, I'm talking about concrete things like policy, money, put it on public money, hiring public services, hiring public service servants, etc., to make this national building process go on. So the result is like they have built up, as I say, their own and different educational system, political party system, and public sphere. So, educational system, Gellner. As I was telling you before, this author, Marxist anthropologist Gellner, he said that the condition of national building is the monopoly, not of violence, as Max Weber will say, but the monopoly of education, in order to achieve some kind of cohesion of the language, at least one language spoken by everybody, right? So in Catalonia is one of the very strange cases in the world where infra-national institutions, regional institutions, have the monopoly of education. If you think about it, it's a bit weird, right? Within the Western world, it's very, very strange. Some people will say that the Spanish elite was very in that time, the 70s, 80s, the Spanish elite were very clumsy. They didn't read Max Weber, no? They didn't read all these books, so they didn't knew that what was going on in the next close future, no? So they give them the educational system. Political party system is completely different. This is very complex to say. That's why they put these two election results. This is the parliament, okay? The Parliament of Catalonia of the last election. It was a few months ago, in December, no? And this is the last election in Spain in December 17. Why do I put this? I'm not going to make a parliamentary system analysis. That's not the idea. The idea is to see how different they are. The first party in Spain, PP, Popular Party, Conservative Party. The last party in Catalonia. Can you really believe that something good can come from that? Do you have a country where the two political systems are so different? The first party in national wide is the last party in regional politics. Can you? I mean, I don't have to analyze it very deeply. Democracy is a competition, wild competition, with a lot of rhetoric, with a lot of analysis, strategy. So what may make you win votes in Spain can make you lose them in Catalonia, and vice versa. That makes the political game very complex. I repeat, things that are efficient from an electoral point of view in Catalonia, they are not in the rest of Spain. So that's it generates a blockage of the situation. It's very hard to find some kind of agreement of negotiation if you lose something in one side and you win in the other. You see? So as I was saying, it's completely different. TV3, this is the Televisión de Cataluña. It's public TV. Like in Hong Kong, you have a public TV too, I think. If I knew. I don't really know why we should have public TVs. I don't really. That's a personal point of view. I think public money should be spent in health and education and things like that. But in Europe, we do it. We have a lot of public TVs, even if they are not, if they don't have benefits. If they lose money, it's okay. It's taught as a public service. That's something that these authors didn't think about because they didn't watch TV, I guess, no. But in the national building process, the TV is very important nowadays. It's very, very important. Even if we are in the digital era, whatever, everybody's with the WeChat or the WhatsApp. Yeah, TV is still the first media for modern societies. So we have the situation now in Catalonia that Televisión Catalunya is the first channel watched by people. What does it mean? 9 o'clock, because here the TV news in TV are like 7, I guess, no? Here in Hong Kong, right? Because you have like more like the British timetable, right? 7, no? 6. Wow, so early. So people have dinner super early, no? In Spain, as you know, people have dinner quite late, so the news are at 9. So any family, any current family, ordinary family in Catalonia will dial the TV3, and the rest of Spain will dial one national channel. What I'm trying to explain to you is this: like they don't even follow the same news. Okay, it's okay. They speak different languages. It's okay. They speak two different languages. They speak 3 different languages, whatever. But the public sphere is separated. The national building process I'm trying to tell you about create 2 different public spheres. That's why you have this political different dynamics too, you know. So the public debate is completely different. I'm not talking about public sphere using of course the Habermas concept, okay, as one of the supposed to be conditions for a liberal democracy. And we're talking about public TV. What that is, and you know that public TV is much more exposed to political manipulation than private TV, of course. This is another example. This is a conservative journal of Spain. Some people don't like it, some people like it. That's not the point. The point is this news. Maybe this news is fake, I don't know. Whatever, the people believe it's true, some people believe it's true, and say, in Catalonian scholar books, Spanish are foreigners. So someone found in one book, official book, no, for the education for primary school in Catalonia, the word foreigner to describe Spanish people. And that was, of course, a big scandal in Spain, in the rest of Spain, not in Catalonia. Educational system. They have their own educational system, so they grow up their own version of history, of identity, etc. So you understand, you have 2 generations now that have grown up watching Catalan TV, reading Catalan textbooks in school, and a few kilometers souther or western, or in the west, they have different TV, different textbooks in the school, etc. That's what I'm not very optimistic. The national building process in Catalonia is not reversible. It's too late. 2 generations, we are not gonna turn it back. I think the tendency is non-stoppable. So now we are going to talk about the current crisis. Okay, I still have some time. So what happened? In 2010, there is a big rupture. First of all, the main conservative party, CEU, it's called CEU, was in power for 30 years. The party was like center-right party. They were the ones who built up this national building process I was telling you about a few minutes ago, okay? So this party historically has been a pro-union, let's say, pro-regime. They only wanted to have more and more competencies in Catalonia, but they were willing to play the game of the national politics in Spain. Actually, the government of Aznar and the government of Zapatero, national government, at some point, in the parliamentary game of Spanish politics, they needed the votes of this party to govern in Spain, and they had them, okay? At some point, this party completely changed his position and they become pro-independence in around 2010. So now we have a new coalition of far left to right, pro-independence party, Esquerra Republicana de Catalunya, that's the oldest party, the party that was in the 30s, that we were talking about before. So it's the oldest party, pro-independence party, like left wing. Coup is like far left, and like CEU has changed his name a couple of times, but it's like a repeat, like center-right, Democrat Christian, we call it. Christian Democrats, we try to call it. So what's the origin of this crisis? Actually, in 2005, 2006, they tried to adopt a new basic law of Catalonia with more and more competencies, but the Constitutional Court suppressed most of the 14 articles that were actually they were going too far into the independence by fact of Catalonia. They were like building up their own justice system, and one article, for example, was trying to make Catalan language preferent to Spanish language, so ending up the co-officiality of the 2 languages, etc. So we have this crazy situation where the basic law was adopted by referendum in Catalonia later, a few years later, was partially annulled by the Constitutional Court. So this has been like the fuel for the conflict, this feeling of some Catalonian people that their vote doesn't prevail under the Spanish Constitution, right? So you have this conflict between the vote and the constitutional legitimacy or constitutional legality. So at that point, these new parties, they understood that they could not go further and further in their claims of have more self-government within the constitutional system of Spain. It was like the moment where they awake of that. No, there were no more negotiation possible. Okay, so no more reform. They choose the rupture. Other factors, of course, the crisis. When there is some kind of crisis, everybody fights, of course. The austerity policies that make people very unrest, as we know, and the corruption scandals within Catalonia, especially within this party. A lot of corruption scandals, and new political actors in competition, especially this far left, and more radical pro-independence party, CUP. So it was a new scenario. So after this situation of 2010, when the Constitutional Court made its decision, there were some tentatives to renegotiate a new basic law with these elements, especially the last one, the total tax monopoly. You can know that any federal system have a total tax monopoly of a region. It's impossible. Any federal system has that. So they were trying to get that, the Catalan regional government. Permanent refusal of negotiation. The Popular Party, PP, was elected in 2011 and re-elected in 2016. As I was saying, this is the result of the differentiation of two political systems, where the Popular Party, if he saw himself as a hardliner, an intolerant face to these claims, they win votes outside of Catalonia. No? If they were like, we don't want to negotiate, that work out well in the competition outside of Catalonia. So they didn't want to negotiate anything. After that, after 2010, 2011, we have this unprecedented mobilization of Catalan civil society. I put civil society like this, not because I don't believe in that concept, I don't really mind about the concept of society, it's because it was a civil society assisted by the regional administration. They create some it was like a legal strategy. They create some associations, like civil society associations, NGOs, foundations, if you want, in order to do what the Catalan administration couldn't do in legal terms. So to avoid being in jail, the politicians create some instrumental associations to keep going on the independence process, as they call it. They call it processes. Demonstrations, international campaign to try to win favor of other countries, creation of a census. That's a very complicated thing. A lot of decision injustice came from that. Whatever. The result is a polarization and a permanent conflict. This is interesting. Another flag. Okay. So this is one of the thousands of pro-independence demonstrations that happened after 2010. So you can see that this flag is different than the other one we saw before, okay? We saw the Catalan flag at the beginning of this Catalan flag, okay? This is different. Why? There is a star. Why there is a star? Maybe you know. Which other countries have a star like that? Puerto Rico or Cuba? So, Spain, the last elements of the Spanish Empire, as I was telling you before, was the African territories of Sahara and Morocco. But before that, in 1898, Spain lost the last American territories of the crown. It was Puerto Rico and Cuba. So at that time, they make a Puerto Rico flag, a Cuba flag, and they put a star. So a star means independence. So the early Catalan nationalism, they really like the idea, so they put the flag they put the star into the flag as a symbol against the Spanish crown and Spanish Empire. So this flag became very, very popular after 2010, and you can see everywhere. You go to Catalonia now, you will see it in the balconies of the houses, in the streets, in the stickers on the cars, etc. So this is interesting. So this is important, some facts. In 2014, they tried to make some kind of pseudo-referendum. It was quite smart from the Catalan government. They don't call it referendum, they call it something else. They call it like civic consultation process. about the future of Catalan political future, something like that. So it was unofficial, it was some kind of trial, if you want, a participation process, 81% of yes to independence, yeah. More than 2 million people voted, it's a lot. It was tolerated, if you want, by the Spanish justice, but some politicians were persecuted by criminal justice afterwards. This is very important. I mean, were persecuted not because they were for independence or for whatever. They were persecuted because they used public money to organize something that it was illegal. So it was more like a corruption process. In legal terms, they were judged by like a corrupted politicians because they were going further than their legal competencies allow them to do. Okay. In 2017, the Catalan independence referendum. That is the last one you have seen in TV, all of you. 90% yes to independence, official vote. It was official vote that time, not like that time, it was official because it was created by bills, by laws, passed by the Catalan parliament. But we don't have an official census, so there was not really guarantees of the transparency, etc., as we normally have in an election. Why? Because it was a very violent police intervention. I mean, the justice called the police to try to forbid the election happen, no? So that creates a chaotic situation where the result doesn't really is valid because of the extraordinary situation. So well, this is more like some kind of a little analysis of the speech, of the discourse of Catalan pro-independence actors. It's a little bit provocative, but I'm a political scientist, as I said, that's my job, to deconstruct the political speeches, not to think that they are essence. So there are a lot of bias. All the political speeches have bias, you know that, it's not anything that we don't know, but some of them has to be clarified. The first one is a bit complicated. Independence is the only way to build a modern country. We want to be a Switzerland of the South. Say Puigdemont. Puigdemont is the last ex-president of Catalonia, former president of Catalonia. This is more dense than it seems, okay? I was telling you before, Catalonia in the beginning of the 20th century was the only industrialized region of Spain, etc. At that time, a lot of immigration from the south of Spain came up to Catalonia. So the national building process started at that time was actually a reaction to that, a reaction to the increasing immigration that could threat their own language, culture, tradition, etc. Whatever, from the beginning, the Catalan national ideology or national speech is based implicitly. It's not clarified, but implicitly, if you analyze the different evolution of the speeches of these actors, you can really find some kind of a myth of cultural and economic superiority. They perceive the rest of Spain as a poor, uncultivated, corrupted, even nowadays. And it's not an opinion, it's a fact. I mean, you can go to the website, you can analyze the speeches of the political actor. They tend to use stereotypes against the Spanish, as if we are, maybe like in Hong Kong with the Mainlanders, no? Something like that. They spit in the floor, and they buy all the powdered milk, I don't know, this kind of ideas, no? Something like that, something happening like that. Okay? This is interesting. Spanish politics are still Francoist. It is a bad quality democracy, which is actually partially true. And there is no rule of law in Spain. Government manipulates justice, especially with the decision I was telling you about of the Constitutional Court, who stopped the self-government process, no, in 2010, etc., etc. This is important. And Catalan institutions, they own their own politics of memory. Since the beginning of the 2000s, the Catalan institutions they really created policies of memory of the Spanish Civil War and the Francoist regime. For example, I was talking before about the mass graves, no? So in Catalonia, there is public money given to the associations to open these mass graves. In the rest of Spain, we don't. You have to do it like private associations, which is very sad, no? For example, in Catalonia, they took off most of the symbols in the streets, statues, name of streets that were, let's say, pro-fascist, no? They replaced them. What else? They create some kind of agency, like little administration, to check the history textbooks in the school, to try to make a version, a narrative within a narrative of the history of the Civil War and Francoist regime, more pro-human rights. Try to talk to educate the new generation about the repression and the systematic violation of human rights done by the Franco regime. You understand? So in Catalonia, I was telling you before, national building implies a policies of memory. So the ones that are in place in Catalonia, they are more pro-democratic, if you want, or more critical with Franco than in the rest of Spain. The rest of Spain, we just don't have any policies of memory. The best policy of memory is to don't have anyone. It is to have none, somebody said once. This is very interesting. This is a very, very clever, I have to say, like very, very brilliant poster. The one party in Catalonia, CUP, the far left party, pro-independence left party, before the referendum of 1st of October, they put this poster in the street. It's very provocative and very intelligent. We don't see the logo of the party, you see? It's not like the typical poster of a campaign where you see vote for me, and you see vote for this party or for this guy. No, this is like we don't put the logo of the party, and they say don't vote 1st of October, not to the Republic of Catalonia. The independence is for creating a Republic of Catalonia. So you can understand the game, no? It's like if Franco was alive, he will ask you not to vote in the referendum. So the politicians and the justice in Spain who wants to avoid the referendum happening think like Franco would have think. Do you follow the logic? I think it's quite brilliant in a political terms. So you see how the memory of Franco regime really shapes politics in Catalonia, as is a source of stigmatization, calling the pro-union politicians or pro-union position as Francoist. They are actually denying its legitimacy. They are actually implying that they are not democratic. They are actually implying that if a judge says that this referendum can't take place because of some legal reasons, the judge is not democratic, it's not the rule of law, the judge has been manipulated by some political actors. That's the speech of pro-independence Catalonian political actors. I'm not judging it. It's a political position, legitimate in any democracy, it's okay. I'm just trying to deconstruct the speech to avoid us of believing of some, as I said before, not to believe in some kind of victimization of essence of identities. This is a game and everybody plays its cards, better or worse, right? This is a very funny photo too. This is the sculpture of Franco in Barcelona. This is La Boqueria Market, maybe you have been there, very nice. So you can see someone cut his head a long time ago, like 10 years ago, something like that. One day in the morning somebody didn't find his head. There is a lot of paintings, they put this very funny doll or whatever you call it. So it seems how there is a conflict of memories in Catalonia, no? How it differs. Because you have to know that, as I was telling you before about the memory policies, theoretically in Spain, the whole country of Spain, since 2007, there has been passed a law that forbids any pro-Franco statues, name of rose in the street, in the public space. So this law in 2007 are supposed to, little by little, take off all the symbols of Franco regime. The law is a bit tricky. It doesn't really tell you how you apply it, so the local governments are not really obligated to follow it. In Catalonia, of course, all of them follow the law and they retire most of the sculptures and symbols. No, this is used before. So it's interesting that in Catalonia, some people were willing to destroy these symbols and take them off, and at the same time, in some towns in Spain, people were resisting against it. No law, a lot of mayors opposed to apply the law in order to avoid the suppression of these symbols in the street of their towns. So you can see how different the dynamics are, okay? And please don't think that all the Catalonian people are against Franco statue. It's just some guy who have the idea of destroying it. It's not like all the societies, things like that. So this is very important. Civil disobedience is the principal instrument. Legitimacy against legality, you know all of it. In cultural studies, I think you really study that. It's like the Martin Luther King movement. You oppose legitimacy to legality in order to emancipate your society or to achieve your goals. This is very interesting. The pro-Europe and pro-cultural diversity speech. That was very complicated. Because of all the pro-independence speech was based on the idea that Catalonia will become, as I said before, the Switzerland of the South. No, this is a very funny expression. That they will remain within the European Union. After that, the Brexit happened, etc. Things have changed, and all the European institutions officially agreed to support the Spanish central government and say that no way, it's not so easy. If you get out of Spain, you get out of Europe. It was a way of pressurizing, of course, of making some pressure into the Spanish politics, because, as I said, European Union can be analyzed as a kind of economic empire, if you want. Single market, so independence of 2 million people, 2.7 million people, is not good for business. So the European Union supported, stand behind the Spanish government, because the European Union is also what it is, but it's an intergovernmental institution. It's an institution composed not by peoples, composed by governments. So the owners, if you want, of the European Union are governments. And who is the government? Spain. It's Madrid. Is the government. Barcelona is not. So this is important because at some point there was a lot of manipulation in the public sphere in Spain and Catalonia about that. Okay, some people believed that it was possible to become independent and remain in the European Union. Now we know it's not. This is very important too. Politicians and civil servants from Catalonia accept constantly to violate the rule of law. Not to violate, maybe it's a too strong word. To get out of the rule of law if you want, no. To say actually for them, the popular democratic will by these pseudo referendums I was telling you about is more important, it's more legitimate, it has more legitimacy than the constitution. The constitution of Spain, they will say that because there is no independence of the judiciary system, there is no rule of law in Spain. Because the politicians manipulate the judiciary system, you can't tell me that you are respecting the rule of law. So I'm not respecting your law because your law is not legitimate. Because it's a Francoist regime, because you manipulate justice, because it's about quality democracy, etc., etc. So I'm trying to deconstruct the speeches, okay, to try to find some logic inside. And this is very interesting. It's the first time since the Civil War that a lot of politicians and civil servants get consciously put themselves outside of the law. That's very important. This never happened before. All the laws that this referendum of the 1st of October happened within a legal framework adopted by the Parliament of Catalonia. Okay, and doing so, they are engaging their criminal responsibility. Some politicians have been judged because of that, because of putting a button saying yes to a bill that is against the Constitution. But they are doing it consciously. This is something that I can't really tell you that I think I was very naive. Like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I wouldn't think it would be possible. Like so many politicians putting themselves outside of the law. I didn't. It was very surprising for me. This is the civil disobedience I was telling you about. This is the images from the 1st of October referendum that was forbidden by justice. This is the very nice very clear images of the passive resistance, they call it. This is like activist jargon, activist language, no? Passive resistance. You don't use violence. You resist passively, no? So you have to take off the guy. The same thing here. They put chains into they were trying to block the entrance to the buildings where vote was going on. So you can see that they don't look like Che Guevara, or it's like normal people, like my grandmother is, You see, different ages. What you have in fast, the pro-union discourse, pro-Spain if you want, pro-union, pro-constitution. The term is not clear. Somebody will tell themselves as pro-constitution. So this is interesting. This revival of the Spanish nationalism traditionally hiding, assimilated to Franco's ideology. As I was telling you before, we didn't have a national building process within the whole Spain as a national Spanish identity. It was more complicated for that because of many reasons I told you before. And in Catalonia, this thing was special. Like the Spanish nationalism is a bit, it has some kind of a stigmate. So you don't show up in public sphere so much. But now we have this revival, this kind of change, defense of the rule of law. As I told you, it's the opposite that civil disobedience. The constitution prevails under the vote. This is the bourgeois liberal democracy. It is what it is. This is interesting too. This is something that the political scientist has been analyzing for like 20 or 30 years. It's a very bit complicated. In Catalonia, we observed a very weird phenomenon. I told you before, there were like two different public spheres, two different political systems, right? So in Catalonia, we saw a very big difference between the vote, the participation participation ratio in the regional election and the general election, national election for the whole Spain, or only Catalan election. In the Catalan election, we always find less people voting. This is very weird. This is very weird. You have to. It's quite subtle. A lot of this means that the citizens of Catalonia, that a lot of them doesn't really feel appealed by the Catalan public sphere and Catalan political system. It's like they were ignoring it. They were living in Catalonia, but they were ignoring it. Statistics, sociological studies show you that we are talking about the people who are most of them, like want to make some kind of profile, the people who are pro-union, if you want, in Catalonia, because we're talking about half of society. They are not talking about a minority, but it's like half, it's a lot of them. But they are not politicized, they are not activists. I was telling you before, since 2010, pro-independence movement is incredible. It has been doing so many things. People are mobilizing in the street, etc. But in face, you don't have anything. The pro-union people, let's say, citizens, they stay at home. That's why we have 90% of yes in the referendum. Can you believe? I mean, it's not North Korea, Catalonia. Can you 90% for? And Saddam Hussein have like 90-something% of vote in his election. But in a European society, you don't have 90% of a result in a society. It's impossible. You understand? That's the thing. The pro-union people didn't play the game. They stay at home in this kind of mobilization, even for the regional election. So, and they were like sociological, economically, they have less money. They are like, most of them, they are like the son and big son of the immigrants from the south of Spain who went to work to Catalonia. They are called charnegos in a pejorative way. So as I say, they are this kind of people. We're talking in the lunch. We were talking before of the pro-human speech as a elite superstructure, if you want, right? Only the enlightened people can participate into politics. In Catalonia, it's happening something like that. The pro-independents are much more active politically. They read more news. They watch more TV shows about politics. They talk about politics more at home. They talk about politics more with their friends. There's a lot of studies about it. I can't explain it too long, but like in ratio, in promedio, I say the pro-union citizens that are pro-union are less involved in politics in Catalonia. And that was proven by the electoral behavior. This pro-union just didn't vote. And now they are like waking up. After this crisis, we see some kind of revival of them, no? And this political hardline against pro-independence is popular in the rest of Spain. Yeah. So this is after the referendum, only 10 days later, we have the demonstration for the unity of Spain. You see how they try to make one flag into two? That is just another demonstration, nothing special. No, there is a lot of special. I can tell you that most of these people, it's the first time in their life they go to a demonstration. In opposition, the pro-independence citizens, they go to demonstration like once a week. I repeat, they are very highly politicized. These people, they are starting now to get politicized. Okay, I'm finishing. The consequence of the referendum 1st of October, like now, 2018. So as I told you, the referendum was forbidden by the police, by the justice, sorry. So that implied a very hard police intervention in order to avoid celebration. It was a completely failure. The referendum took place. And this is very important. Something similar happened in 1st of October 2017, like in 34. Remember, in the beginning of this presentation, I was telling you about 1934. The army fought the Catalan police. That didn't happen again, thanks to God. Didn't happen again, of course. But some media are trying to say that. I mean, not media. The justice actually is persecuting some civil servants of the Catalan police because they didn't follow the orders of the justice. The judge say, go to this school to avoid people vote because it's illegal, you know. and the police, Catalan police, didn't follow the order. I mean, the judge will say if they broke the law or not. But what happened is that there was a very big discoordination between the national police and the Catalan police. There is some images in the media showing that they were not fighting, but they were almost fighting. National police and Catalan police, they were like insulting themselves. So we had some tension between two. This is very important, because that's how things can go very, very bad, as it happened before. If the state loses the monopoly of violence, you know what can happen after that. And we know in Europe, after the Balkans wars in the 80s, how things can get. A lot of politicians are in jail. 8 ex-members of the government. The ex-president Puigdemont is in exile or evaded in Brussels. It depends your point of view. If you are pro-independent, you will say that he's in exile. If you are pro-union, you will say that he's a criminal evading justice, no, hiding from justice. I won't say anything. Anyone can hide his own opinion. And this is more complicated. It's very long to explain. I want the application of this article. So all the administration of Catalonia has been intervened by Madrid, by the central government. This is very complex. It never happened before. People were very scared. Me within them, I have to say, I was very skeptical. I thought it was very chaotic in a legal way, the concrete legal administration way. It wasn't. Finally, it worked out better than anybody expected. And they are starting to try to undo this nation building process I was telling you about. The intervention of the regional administration means the paralyzation of all this process. But it's too late. I told you, 2 generations after that, 2 generations of nation building, you won't reverse it within a few months of control of some administration. It's too late. We have a new election with a similar result than before. So now we have this catastrophic drought. It's an expression that used by García Linera, is a Bolivian political scientist, saying that we have this like 2 blocks in drought, 50-50 if you want. We don't know how to make a solution. And economic stagnation. 2,500 companies have fled Catalonia. That's it. Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias, Mgoy. I think I have talked a very long time. I don't know. So if you have any questions, we can discuss. Thank you very much for listening. Mgoy.